4 protesters accused of criminal damage for toppling the statue of slave trader Edward Colston have been found not guilty. These were the scenes from Bristol Crown Court after the verdict came in.
We are ecstatic and stunned. I tried to write something ready for this moment, and I'm just so overwhelmed because it never felt like we'd get here, and now we're here. We just want to say thank you to so many people, because we have never been alone in this journey. We've been so supported, and we are, we're such a small part of this, really. There were so many people that day, so many people reverberating across the world in response to it.
You heard speaking there Rhiann Graham. She was with Sage Willoughby, Milo Ponsford and Jake Scoos, who together make up the Colston 4. What's remarkable in this case is that none of the 4 contested that they took part in the pulling down of a statue of a slave trader at a Black Lives Matter protest in summer 2020, nor did they contest having a role in dumping the statue of Edward Colston in Bristol Harbour. Instead, they argued the toppling of the statue was justified because it was motivated by sincere anti-racist principles. The 4 spoke in their own defence in court, expressing frustration that previous attempts to persuade the council to remove the statue had failed, and contending that the statue was so offensive that it constituted an indecent display or a hate crime. And, as you've seen, the jury agreed toppling that slave trader was not against the law. Dahlia, what do you make of this verdict?
Oh, it's absolutely brilliant news. Absolute solidarity to those heroes, and I'm so glad that the jury acquitted them, because I think if they'd been found guilty, I think it would have been an incredibly demoralizing moment for a movement and a sort of cultural shift that has been taking place that is incredibly exciting. And yes, it causes. It's incredibly polarized. And yes, there's a lot of backlash from certain parts of the political spectrum and the media. But that's the nature of changing things. That's the nature of struggle. Statues do not have an inalienable right to exist. We deserve to have input, and we deserve to shape the built environment in which we live. And especially when we look at these, particularly these statues, where for many of the men, largely men, that have been made into statues, it is through immense harm, immense violence, immense exploitation that they were able to garner the kind of financial and political dominance that meant that statues were then built of them. And I think it's really, really important, because when statues are taken down, when statues are removed, when they're brought into public interest and when they're brought into public discussion, we're not just talking about the physical being of the statue. We're talking about the history that it represents. And we're talking about how the choices that we make when we remember and narrativize and talk about our history. And that very much shapes the present, and it shapes how we go into the future. And so the ability to contest statues and the ability to use statues to provoke these reckonings, and the ability in the case in which, when democratic channels are systematically being blocked for people who want to go through, I did a talk in Bristol. I can't remember what year, but I feel like I did it in 2017, 2018. And it was on the topic of statues, because, I'd been active in the Roads Must Fall movement, and they were talking about the Colston statue then. And, we were discussing it. People brought up, the experience of trying to get the Colston statue taken down through the available political and democratic channels. And I can attest to the number of years that Bristol activists, that Bristol community members have tried to exercise their democratic right and had it shut down in their face. And so I think that it's incredibly important that these 4 heroes were acquitted. And I think that this is a really great moment for not only this ongoing movement that we're having about reckoning and decolonizing our memory of particularly slavery and colonialism and Britain's role in those things, but also in the right to democratically protest and the right to take democratic action, which, as we know, is that right is being attacked, that right is being, worn down by this government. And this is a really important and, heartwarming victory. We should take the victories when we can get them, because it's incredibly important.
It should set a precedent for local authorities whereby if they think they can get away with keeping up statues or monuments or whatever, which are offensive to parts of their community, and then they ignore all the democratic means. We talked about this in depth, the way that they sort of stood in the way of all the attempts that people in that community made to have their voice heard and have it removed by the conventional means. If they leave those statues up, deny those democratic rights, then if someone pulls it down, they might well get away with it. So I would hope to now see preemptive action from loads of local authorities across the country who are now worried that if they leave the thing up, someone might come pull it down and then be vindicated in court. So it's very, very exciting times. It's good that those will hopefully be the conversations which are now happening in town halls across the country.